watching these fairly close. We don't want to have meetings run on and on and on. So we're watching. If there's a large group here and they want to have discussion, please exit the building, not the chambers here, but the building, because if you're out in the foyer there, we still hear the noise and everything. Martha, will you have prayer for us? Dave, please lead us in pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Ms. Casabon. Mr. Hines. Mr. Richard. Ms. Qureshi. Mr. Willie. Mr. Matthews. Mr. Davis. Mr. Manella. Mr. Mackey. Mr. Doherty.
Here.
Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you very much. I need a motion to open the agenda for some special business. Moved by Mr. Willie, seconded by Mr. Davis. Please vote. Thank you. Motion carries. Special business is, this is Mr. Neil Hall, our attorney, for last meeting as our legal counsel. He's going to retire, but kind of be on the sideline so he can help out Terry when needed, or help us out on difficult cases. Neil, I haven't had the opportunity to serve as many years as some of these folks have, but it's certainly been a pleasure working with you on some of these cases that got quite involved and always got good guidance from you. Thank you very much, and if any of the rest of the commissioners would like to say anything, please.
It's been an honor. I've learned quite a lot of legal information from you. You've done a great job. Thank you for your years of service.
Jimmy?
And thank you for maintaining a level of calmness.
Only up here. No, listen, it's been great. I've loved it, working with you and for you guys, and especially those that are no longer with us. And I didn't get a chance to work with some of you too long, but it's just been fantastic. And you guys really deserve the applause for dedicating your time to come in here and serve. It's a tough job, and a lot of the cases are controversial, and you guys do a tremendous job. So thanks for giving me the chance to represent you and give you some legal advice whenever you need it. I really appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you, Neil, and we will miss you. Terry, you're completely up to speed now, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, all right, just wanted to be sure. All right, next item on the agenda is approval of minutes. Gentlemen, have you had an opportunity to review these minutes? Any corrections?
Yes, I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Ms. Casabon to approve, seconded by
Second.
Mr. Willie. Please vote. Motion carries. Thank you. Consent calendar, performance obligations, and entering parish right-of-way. Any items not pulled from the consent calendar are automatically dispensed by vote as approved and/or as per staff comments. Items pulled from the consent calendar shall be discussed and voted upon individually. Staff, do you have anything you need pulled?
We were going to request to pull the minor subdivision on page 2, MS 1205-017, because they would need a waiver of the road construction standards. However, as I see right now, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We only have 7 members, so the waiver can't be approved. So I've talked to the representative of the petitioner, and they wish to go ahead and table it tonight
Okay.
until the next meeting.
All right. Any other items need to be pulled?
Do we
Thank you.
do we
Commissioner have
formally have to
anything?
table it? Do I have to make a motion to
Yeah,
table
let's
it?
see if there's any other items that need to be pulled. Any other items that need to be pulled?
I'll
Mr.
make a-
Davis?
Then I'll make a
I have
motion. to
a
table
question
that.
about the first performance obligation of Beta Terrace. I saw that the planning department went ahead and sent a letter to Mr. Harrell, and he was supposed to appear tonight. Is he here tonight? I just, because that was one of the criteria I noticed in that, but I just. Okay, so but I saw that, but he was still supposed to appear, is that correct? Correct. Okay, thank you.
So you don't want to pull that one? Okay. Any other items need to be pulled? Ms. Casbon, you have a motion to pull the minor subdivision?
Yes.
We have a second. Second by Mr. Davis. Please vote.
Is it to pull or to just
This
table?
was
Do we
to
have to
pull.
say
This
table?
was
We're
to
just
pull
gonna
and table.
pull it
Yeah,
to table it.
yeah,
Right.
table.
And now we need a motion to table.
I'll motion to table.
Motion by Ms. Casabon, seconded by Mr. Davis to table. Please vote. Okay, motion carries. All right, we need a motion to adopt the consent calendar.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Willie, seconded by, Tariq. Please vote. Motion carries. All right, first item after the consent calendar is a tentative subdivision review. Plauché Estates, Ward 3, District 3, developer, owner, 110 Capital Pool 2 LLC, engineers Kelly McHugh and Associates, Parish Council District Representative Honorable James Red Thompson, staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The proposed development has jurisdictional wetlands. Therefore, the developer should be required to submit a copy of an approved Army Corps of Engineers permit to the Department of Engineering prior to receiving a work order in conjunction with the preliminary subdivision review process. Number two, in order to promote traffic safety, the developer should provide a 5-foot no-access servitude running along the side yards facing the street side for lots 57 and 58. Comment 3, the developer needs to provide a 10-foot wide pedestrian access servitude through one of the lots fronting on Planche Court or through the utility site property in order for the residents of the subdivision to gain access to the green space behind lots 43 through 53. Staff recommends approval, subject to the developer complying with these 3 comments, and engineering has some comments.
Parish engineer should be changed to Director of Department of Engineering on the plat signature line. The road cross section specifying concrete conflicts with the asphalt road surface label above the signature line. The lateral drainage servitude proposed should meet the required cross section. The tentative plat appears to show the pond parcel, including a green space area behind lots 24 to 33 being dedicated to St. Tammany Parish. Green space area should not be dedicated to St. Tammany Parish. Provide an access servitude across the green space for the pond and make the pond and green space separate parcels. The subdivision appears to be mostly or totally within the 100-year floodplain. No net fill calculations should be submitted. The finished floor elevation must be specified to be at least 1 foot above the center line of the road or the 100-year flood elevation, whichever is greater, in the minimum restrictive covenants. Off-site drainage may be entering the site from the existing residential lots to the north. Any potential off-site impact should be determined, and if necessary, easement should be provided to intercept any off-site drainage. The area labeled a 40-foot drainage servitude is a parcel, not a servitude. This 40-foot parcel should be separate from the pond parcel. Watershed submittal for the preliminary should include stormwater sediment plan complete with sediment erosion controls and stabilized construction entrance with a copy of the stormwater notice of intent as submitted to LDEQ. The traffic impact analysis for this development has been reviewed. The developer is required to install a right turn lane on Planche Road on its eastbound approach to LA 25. In addition, a left turn lane on LA 25 turning into the development will be required. A driveway permit from DOTD is required in order to install these improvements, and the turn lane should conform to DOTD standards and requirements, including but not limited to required storage links. The cost of these turn lanes, including any right-of-way cost, is the sole responsibility of the developer and will be in addition to any mandatory impact fees that are assessed. Department of Environmental Services has no comments.
Thank you. Petitioner present? Okay, and your name?
My name is Andrew Mintime of Jones Purcell Law Firm.
Okay. Is there any opposition? No opposition. Go ahead, please.
Great. Good evening, Commission. Again, my name is Andrew Mintime on behalf of 110 Capital LLC. 110 is a local LLC based out of Covington. And as you all know, we're here in regards to the tentative subdivision approval of Posh Estates. I assume most of you are probably looking at the tentative plat, but in any event, I'll give you just a familiarization of where the vicinity of the proposed subdivision. It'll be located off of MP Planche Road. MP Planche Road is located off of Highway 25, just north of Covington. So if you're heading north. It helps, doesn't it? So if you're heading north from toward Folsom, MP Planche is right at 2 miles north of the intersection of Collins Boulevard and Ronald Reagan Highway near the Winn-Dixie. Again, my client is seeking approval of a tentative plat that depicts 126 subdivision, a lot subdivision situated on roughly 39 and a half acres. You'll notice on the plat that the average lot size of 7,200 square feet with 60 feet by 120 feet dimensions complies with the current A4A zoning that the subdivision is located in. After the original tentative plat was submitted for review, 12 comments were suggested in order to have the plat comply with the Code of Ordinances. The plat was resubmitted prior to Monday, June 4th, and then the staff in its report dated June 5th suggested the 3 comments that Mr. Keller told us about, and also the 10 changes with respect to the Department of Engineering. Since the issuance of that June 5th staff report, my client and his engineers have reviewed the comments and have undertaken or are currently undertaking all of the necessary steps to fully comply with all of those comments. Sorry I didn't have the chance to get that 3rd revised plat out tonight, but it should be coming shortly. So I'll address each of Mr. Keller's comments. The first, with regard to the jurisdictional wetlands, my client has had a wetlands study and determination completed, and there is in fact a very small portion that has been determined to be wetlands. If you look at the plat, you can see that little neck that kind of juts out on the right-hand side of the page. On the southern portion of that little neck, you can see a small little sliver of land that has been determined to be wetlands. However, my client doesn't have any intention of developing that portion of ground delineated as wetlands or otherwise impacting that area in any manner. This plat does show that area designated as wetlands will be completely utilized as green space. As such, my client won't be seeking any permit from the Army Corps as it relates to impacting the wetlands. And it's my understanding that because the area designated as wetlands will not be impacted at all, there isn't a need for a permit to be sought or issued with respect to those wetlands. As it relates to number 2, the Department of Planning's comments regarding in order to promote traffic safety, the developer should provide 5 feet no-access servitudes running along the side yards facing the street side for lots 57 and 58. I had a conversation with the engineer today working on this project, and he indicated to me that this 5-foot servitude was in fact on the first tentative plat, but was accidentally omitted from the second tentative plat. But we understand this comment, don't have any objections to it, and it was really an oversight that it wasn't incorporated on the second revised plat. Lastly, with respect to number 3 of the Department of Planning's comments, the developer needs to provide a 10-foot wide pedestrian access servitude through one of the lots fronting on Planche Court or through the utility site property in order for the residents of the subdivision to gain access to the green space. Again, my client is an engineer, and his engineer understand this requirement, have no objections to it. And in fact, the engineer told me that the servitude will actually be 20 feet wide and will run along the western edge of that utility site. That's the sewer plant that you see on the plat. And it will be adjacent to the eastern boundary of Lot 53. And this will be a servitude. I'd be more than happy to address the engineering concerns as well. I guess it's maybe not completely appropriate to address all those concerns as this is tentative and a lot of those concerns will come up preliminary. However, item number 10 under the Department of Engineering's comments relates to traffic, which is appropriate for tonight's meeting. Pursuant to the traffic impact analysis, we are required to install a right turn lane on Plosh Road on its eastbound approach to Highway 25. And in addition to that, a left-hand turn lane on Highway 25 turning into the development as you're proceeding north toward Folsom. A driveway permit from DOTD will be required in order to install the improvements, and the left turn lane shall conform to DOTD standards. My client's fully aware of the traffic impact analysis and its findings, and is fully willing and intends to comply with the requirements, including solely bearing the cost of the turn lanes, right-of-ways, and any mandatory impact fees. Again, I'd be happy to address, to the best of my ability, there are other concerns regarding, most of which I think are drainage. I'd like to reiterate my client's willingness to diligently and address and incorporate any and all changes that are necessary to have his development fully comply with all state and local regulations as it relates to this subdivision, and respectfully ask for approval. I'd
Thank
be
you.
happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Davis, Mr. Willie, I'm sorry.
I have one, Andrew. Right by lot 65, that property owned by the developer, and it's got a 20-foot servitude next to it, right north of lot 65. What's that land for?
It says it's utility servitude, so
Not the servitude, but the bigger portion of the land owned by the developer. It looked like it could be another entrance or something.
you know, I'm not exactly familiar. I can,
It's a building,
Okay.
it's a lot, for a residential lot? Okay, it's not part of the subdivision, though? Okay.
thank you.
Okay, any other questions by the commission? Ms. Casbon?
Yes, I see the willingness of the developer to meet all of our requirements. And again, in the engineering, when we get to that portion, I feel sure that they will comply with whatever engineering needs. If there's no other questions at this time, I'll make a motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve. We have a second by Mr. Davis. Willie, thank you. Please vote. Motion carries. Thank you. Mr. Mennel, I believe you had an item you wanted to
Thank you.
move up. Turn your mic on.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like a motion to amend the agenda to move up the item under old business, Money Hill.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion carries. Thank you. Get over here to the agenda. Under old business, we have Money Hill, Phase 2A and 2B sewer, Ward 6, District 6. The debtor's Money Hill Plantation Limited Partnership, Engineering GEC. Parish Council District is Honorable Richard Tanner. It was on the agenda last month, and we requested someone appear to answer any questions that we may have had. And the next item is Money Hill Phase 2A and 2B water, Ward 6, District 6. Debtor again is Money Hill Plantation. The engineer is GEC. Parish Council District is Richard Tanner. Same reason we will need to vote on these separately. Do we need to vote on those, right? Okay. All right, and your name?
My name is Mimi Goodyear Dossett, and I am the manager of Money Hill Golf and Country Club. When I took over for my father in 2008, this is one of the first things I asked about, these ongoing performance obligations, and it was explained to me that we have about 300 lots that are sold, and so far we have 160 homes. And it was also my understanding, even back in 2008, that as we approach the 175 existing home mark, we would need to put in another sewer facility. While we will probably not get to another 15 homes over the next year, I do agree that it's time for us to start looking into getting bids and moving forward with the new sewer plant or facility or whatever it's called. So anyway, we're going to move ahead with that. I think the second performance obligation for the water is not something that needs immediate attention, but, so.
Okay.
Any questions?
Commissioners have any questions? Martha?
Yeah, this was, if I'm getting this straight from engineering and stuff, that, as she said, they are at capacity, that they need, how urgent is this to install? You have 175 homes? or-
Well, we have 160 homes. 170 was
But you have sold 300?
yeah, we have many more lots to sell. So I mean, we're not, I actually live on the property. We're planning to continue out
But
over
if you
many
sold
years.
those, that means they're at final, and as they build, if they
Right.
don't come in at that time, that it does take a while. But your suggestion is,
Well, I do not anticipate that we'll have another 15 homes over the next year. However, and secondly, a lot of our homes are second homes, so we don't have the same capacity maybe
Right.
that some other subdivisions may have. But I also agree that we are just at that time when we
okay.
are ready to
That's what I
start
was going to
looking.
ask staff, that how soon that they would need to have this into operation, to give her a timeline that,
I
say,
really
within,
don't have a timeline, but they're at the stage where they need to start looking at doing something.
all right. So I'm confused on our performance obligation. As she says, it keeps coming up. So what we're saying is this would continue to come up until they are at the capacity, or the 300. Explain to me about, I guess, the performance obligation, that she doesn't have to keep coming back and telling us, yes, they're ready. You know, that's what I'm questioning.
Yeah, once they do the work, then this will go away. Until then, the performance obligation
Right.
keeps coming up. And what Jay is saying is, hey, this is time to do it, because
Right.
Environmental Services doesn't want to be put in the position of saying, no more permits in Money Hills until.
Exactly, okay. So as far as this, we could continue to see this on the agenda, or once they start, they start the work, will we see it? Or until they have to complete the
They
work,
have to
because this
complete
is
the
what the
work
bond.
before we stop seeing this. It
Okay,
may be
so-
reduced if they do some of the work.
Okay. So, because some of these were questioned, that we keep seeing them, and they're coming up and having to explain it, that everybody understands that we would keep seeing this until the plant's in and they have those online. So that was my
Well,
question.
And could I make a suggestion? If you will renew it for 6 months, perhaps when it comes up again, I will have the estimates
Well,
and
it
some kind
keeps
of report.
renewing. That's what we're
Right.
saying, until you have, we are not going to pull this because we don't want to do the work. We want you to do the work, but we're just letting you know that it is at that stage you need to start on it.
Right, and hopefully in 6 months, when it comes back up again, we will have some estimates and have a plan, and, maybe I could just come back and report then.
Okay.
Yeah,
So,
the commission's
we've
taking,
actually already gotten some estimates and have some of this in
Good.
progress, so.
We
the
appreciate
commission's taking the position that on these that we've had to continually renew, that we would like to see, someone representing that particular piece, so that if there's any questions, they can be answered at that time.
Okay,
Okay?
But-
Thank you.
thank you.
Legal counsel, because there,
I have a
this was
question.
dealt with last month, and this is just a request to appear. We don't need
We
to
don't need to
vote on
vote.
this. Sharice, you have a question?
I do. I noticed in the letter dated June 1st that, and it says on one of the bullet points, in 8 of the past 12 months, the design flow of the capacity of the treatment plant was exceeded. What are the implications of exceeding the design flow?
Well, I haven't seen that you're looking at, but I think,
okay. Oh, that's staff?
we've had several, we had to work on our water system and sewer. It's not owned by Money Hill, it's owned by H2O.
Okay.
Right, this
And,
was data that I got from H2O, and it's a 50,000 gallon system. And 8 of the past 12 months, it's reported higher flows than 50,000 gallons per day.
So what happens when it's higher than the 50,000?
It means it's exceeding its capacity.
So what happens to the extra capacity? Excuse my ignorance, I don't know what happens to the
Right,
extra
well,
capacity.
there-
Where does it go?
I could, without,
does it
we
go?
have several lift stations around the property, and it's a gravity sewer system. And so, if the lift stations go on at different times, you can control the flow into the sewer so that you don't have an overflow.
Okay.
But I think they say that they're getting to the point where they're having trouble managing that, so that they need, for us to put another sewer system in so that there's no pressure on the overall system. I could go on and on if you want. I know a lot more than I ever wanted to know about sewers. But
Okay,
anyway,
I'm just wondering where that extra 14,000 gallons are going, if it's
It's
overflow?
going through the treatment plant, but it
Okay.
may not be treating as well as it's supposed to be treating if it's treating above its capacity.
Okay, gotcha, okay.
Well, I guess a follow-up with that, is there any DEQ, do they pose any fines or mandatory work to be done or anything like that?
I can look into it and see
Well,
if they have.
we're
I
not trying
don't
to do
know if
that,
they
but
have.
just a question.
DEQ is who this is permitted through, so it's,
Okay.
it's DEQ's permit, and they can, I guess they can fine them if they,
What-
yeah.
What I also understand from Kelly McHugh is that because the area is more spread out than your average subdivision, that there's a longer time in the sewer lines that the product goes through it. And so by the time it gets to the sewer treatment facility, it's a little more septic than it would be if there was a lot more flowing through. So even though technically, based on the number of people, we're not really reaching capacity, H2O is finding that we need to go ahead and put this new treatment facility in just because of the distances between the houses. And probably as we get more houses, some of that will be alleviated. But by then we'll already have a new sewer system, so it's okay. And it is something that we are all, H2O and Money Hill are working together on. So,
You may have already answered this question, I'm sorry, but what's the time frame of you doing this?
well, we just got another engineering report about 2 weeks ago, and they read the same thing and explained all that. And I don't, it's not like urgent that we have to get it done tomorrow, but we are in the process of contacting people to get estimates, to get them to come out and take a look and give us, information about what size we need. I'm not sure how long it takes for them to get back with a full estimate, and then I'm not sure how long after that it takes for us to pick one. But we are in the process of addressing this, over the next 6 months. I feel that if this performance bond comes up every 6 months, that when it comes up next time, I'll be here to appear and I will have information for you about the new plant and the installation timeframe and everything else you would need to know. And I understand also, we got a letter that the water is not a matter of any immediacy. So,
Yeah, the water was one of the items that we had to extend as well. So you're still not to the point where I guess you need additional capacity?
Do y'all have your well, or is it?
We have-
Is it a well, it's the well
Yes.
that's the artesian, no.
we have a well.
Pretty deep, it's been there,
I mean, it's a well that would serve a town, so
Yeah.
it's not, I don't, the $30,000 water obligation, I'm not as familiar with what that actually covers because I haven't had to, we haven't,
It was probably a standard, if I'm not if I can remember, that this was just a standard that, Money Hill is very different. It's very wooded, very hilly, with, the lake and everything, that the water was there, but this was, if I'm not mistaken, Ron, was that just a regular, amount that would, do you remember how long ago?
Jay might know that, though.
Jay might?
This was established
Jay was
before I
new.
got here.
When this was done, Jay wasn't thought of,
Yeah,
no.
I'm not sure, I probably couldn't answer that.
Okay. Why was it put at 30,000?
Yeah, I wouldn't know.
Okay.
It typically would be based on maybe
But the pressure and all that kind of stuff, you haven't had any complaints on that? The
No.
water pressure and?
we haven't. And I would think that the 30,000 would be for maybe a secondary reserve
Reserve.
tank or something like that.
Correct.
But we haven't had any problem at all there,
Okay.
so.
All right, so we don't have to make a motion, as you said?
No, you don't need a
So that
motion.
we've just been
Jay, I
explaining.
do have a question for you. With the 14,000 overcapacity on the wastewater, they are still meeting the minimum standards for St. Tammany Parish and DEQ, is that correct?
I'd have to look at the DMRs they submitted, but I don't think they are busting any of the limits that they have set by DEQ. They're just exceeding the capacity.
Okay, all right. So as far as we know right now, then they are in compliance?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right, thank you. Anyone
Thank
else have
you.
any questions? Thank you very much.
See you soon. Thanks.
Back to the agenda. Let's see. We did tentative preliminary subdivision review, SD 12-04-001, P2, Grand Oaks, Phase 2, Ward 1, District 1. Developer owner is Trinity Developers. Engineers Kelly McHugh and Associates, Parish Council District Honorable Marty Dean. Staff?
The preliminary plans and hydrologic study have been reviewed by this office and inspections made of the site. It is recommended that preliminary submittal be approved subject to the following. A copy of the current U.S. Army Corps of Engineers permit is needed. The 2008 revised preliminary D-firm shows 100-year flood elevation just downstream of this site as being 17.0 feet. Please perform cut and fill calculations to an elevation of 17.0 feet or your calculated water surface elevation, whichever is higher. On the plat, drainage easement should be shown between lots 177 and 178, 169 and 170, 146 and 147, 155. And I believe that should have been 156, 105 and 106, 101 and 102, 109 and 110, 113 and 114, 114 and 115 and 121 and 122 as culverts are proposed at these locations. An access easement should be proposed for the east pond parcel as it is to be maintained by St. Tammany Parish. The submitted calculations for the flow going to the cross culverts near lot 15 show approximately 56 CFS at a 10-year event. The 2008 D-firm HECRAS model shows 435 CFS at a 100-year event. Please revise your calculations to a 100-year event and show the subcatchment area so we can determine which calculation is correct. Culvert calculations are based on concrete roughness coefficient, not the BCCSP, which is allowed in the note. Please revise the allowed culvert type or the calculations. Need current U.S. Army Corps of Engineer permit. The drawing furnished is not sufficient. The ponds do not appear to stage water up to the design height required in the hydrologic study. The west pond is hydraulically connected to a ditch with an invert that does not appear to exceed 17.5 feet on its path to the creek. The east pond is hydraulically connected to the same ditch, which from there does not appear to exceed 17 feet on its path to the creek. The pond cross-section shown shows a 10-foot flat area and a 9 to 12-foot slope, a total of 20 feet before the low water level is required. Lot 124 on the culvert schedule should state that the size is for west of the cross culvert. The lot 162 note on the culvert schedule should be clarified to read no culvert allowed north of the cross culvert. How is off-site water received into the subdivision? The drainage plan does not show any ditches, culverts, or lot drainage details showing this. A maintenance obligation in the amount of $10,000 is already on file for the project. Mandatory developmental fees will be required at final submittal in accordance with Ordinance 499 since no public hearing was held prior to January 1st, 2005.
Plans and specifications for the construction of the project's water distribution lines and sewage collection lines have not yet been approved by the Department of Health and Hospitals as required. No work order will be issued until the submitted plans and specifications are approved by DHH.
Thank you. Any opposition to this? Mr. Morone.
Thank you, Mr. Doherty. Paul Marone on behalf of Trinity Developers. We received the staff's initial comments back on May 18th and responded to those on May 30th or May 31st in an attempt to address all of the concerns. The latest list, I believe, has been received by Mr. McHugh's office. They're in the process of working on all of these items. The majority of these items are notes or clarifications with regards to easements or culverts and so forth. There are a few that I would say are substantive, in particular the ones dealing with the calculations, item E, the culverts on item F, and the pond on item H. In speaking with Mr. McHugh's office today, we do not envision problems with any of these, that we'll be able to produce the calculations and revise the plans accordingly to make sure that they're, one, in compliance with the parish ordinances, and two, they satisfy the content of those ordinances and produce a properly functioning drainage system out there. You will recall that this project originally had preliminary approval. We came back and modified our tentative and now our preliminary because there was a change in the configuration to avoid some wetlands and also to increase the size of some of the ponds. So this is accomplishing that. We will accomplish the revisions to the plat as required, and subject to your staff's review of those modifications, we would respectfully request approval.
Commissioners, Martha?
Oh, does anybody have any questions? Let Jimmy.
No, I think it looks very good, actually. I think it looks very good. I like the way you have the green space. You redid all this and have the green space around the wetlands area. I think it's very good.
Thank you.
Motion approved?
Make a motion to approve.
Mr. Davis, motion to approve. We have a second.
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Casabon. Please vote. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item is proposed amendments to ordinance 499, an ordinance to amend St. Tammany Parish Code of Ordinances, Appendix B, Chapter 40 of Subdivision Regulatory Ordinance Number 499, specifically Section 40-070.0, Final Subdivision Review, relative to the approval of the final subdivision plat. Staff?
Mr. Chair, the Parish Council is presently considering a reorganizational ordinance which would create a new Department of Development and combine some of those developmental functions under one director. As part of that, this is the first of a series of amendments that we're going to have to do, assuming that ordinance is adopted, that would transfer the signature authority on the final plats and some of the other documents to the Director of Development as opposed to the Director of Engineering, because the part of that reorganization proposal is to move subdivision engineers to the Department of Development, and the Board of Engineers requires that anybody, that the Director of Engineering would have to, cannot sign the plat unless somebody in his direct supervision does the review and indicates that it meets the requirements. So that's the reason, because the subdivision engineers will be under the direct supervision of the Department of Development, not the Department of Engineering. We need to make that switch. We did verify with state law and other enabling legislation. There is no requirement that an engineer sign that plat, the final plat on subdivisions. It is essentially somebody signing on behalf of the commission, because the commission is the one approving it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fontenot. Mr. Hernandez?
Thank you. Carlo Hernandez. I'd just like to take this opportunity to wish Neil Hall well. He and I have certainly had a number of conversations over the years, and I'm sure what I'm about to say he will agree with, so I'm confident of that. The thing about this is, and it's curious, and he's already stated for you, the director has that the Parish Council has yet to act on creating this department yet, and yet we're going to proceed and make it signatory as if it was in fact in place already, which is curious. It would seem to me that we would wait until the department has been created before we acted as we're about to recommend acting to the Parish Council. And of course, it'll be stated then that by the time this then goes to the Parish Council, by then, assuming that the Parish Council does adopt it, that maybe by then it will have already been adopted. I think it's curious also that, the Department of, and he did say that other amendments may follow. The term Director of Engineering or the Department of Engineering appears in 499 over 80 times. And yet this is the one time, apparently, that we're going to change it to the Department of Development, which is interesting. It appears a bunch of times in there, but this one time we're going to change it to Department of Development, which I find a little curious as to why it wouldn't be applicable in other sections. It certainly would be applicable, I think, in a couple of other sections that I've seen in 499. But yes, and he's shaking his head yes, and he and I obviously have not spoken about this, but obviously I see other sections in 499 where it would be applicable, and it's curious why we would just be proposing to change it in this one section and not in the other sections, I think, where it would also be applicable. But, you know, it's not for me to say as to how we're proceeding on this, except that I would suggest that maybe we wait until the department, St. Tammany Parish Council has in fact adopted it before we proceed now and making it, and maybe we can make it a more comprehensive ordinance, including all of the sections in 499 where it would be applicable. So something to consider. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Fontenot or Mr. Hall?
There are at least two other areas where we need signature changes, and that would be minor subdivision and, is it re-subdivision? Administrative resubs. The timing of this one would coincide with when all the departments or positions from other departments are combined into one location. Potential adoption of this document by the council would be their August meeting, and we're actually moving in together on August 6th. We begin the move. So that was the reason for trying to push this one through. There are others. We looked at a more comprehensive review, and there's no way we could make that comprehensive change and try to hit that August 6th deadline or timeline. The signatures are critical because that's the final step of the process. The departments will still work together. Department of Engineering on both transportation, drainage, and other aspects will still work with the Department of Development, with the subdivision engineer, with the subdivision engineer being the primary contact between the Department of Engineering and the Department of Development. We're not creating a separate all-powerful entity. We're trying to locate all those development-related functions in one location, so the customers are not bouncing from building to building, from site to site when they're trying to get something done. So there will be other amendments. Unfortunately, we noted the other items on the signatures after the advertising for this one. We looked at this one. We wrote this one very specific, very, very narrow. We didn't feel it was appropriate to try and get you to make those other changes tonight, but they will be coming at your July meeting, along with some others. It's simply a matter of trying to get as much as we can in for when the departments consolidate, we can keep the process moving for the public.
Okay, what about the other 70-some odd?
I was just, and I would echo what Sidney's saying, that the more critical thing is the final plat. The other amendments would be for the preliminary and tentative subdivision review, and there wouldn't be any real urgency to get that done. But the council currently will be considering adoption of the reorganization ordinance next month. So this will be timely in that they will have an opportunity to look at the reorganization ordinance, which was introduced and amended this month. So next month, that ordinance would be ready for adoption. And assuming they adopt that, this would be ripe for adoption as well. But even if it got postponed another month, this one would still not get adopted until that got adopted. So it would all be in place.
If your action was the final action on this, I would agree with Mr. Hernandez. It'd be premature. But yours is just a recommendation that could not, under the best circumstances, be adopted until August.
Right.
That'd be the ideal circumstances with no delays, no discussions. If everybody agrees, it's introduced in July and lays over until August. That would be the earliest it could be adopted. And we're hopeful that we get a resolution from the council at their July meeting. If not, they'll be looking at their August meeting also. And actually, both items would be up at the August meeting.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Manella, I believe that's your light on, or Davis?
I think this makes sense to go ahead and adopt this tonight, because obviously, if this goes to the council and stuff, they can't adopt this if there is no Department of Development. So it really comes down to that. So this can't be adopted unless there's absolutely a Department of Development. So with that being said, I make a motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Davis, seconded by Mr. Manella. Please vote. Motion carries. Thank you. Under old business, we still have one item, Lakeshore Estates Phase 1A3, Water, Ward 9, District 13. The debtors, Tammany Holding Corporation, Engineer is GEC. Parish Council District is Honorable Richard Artigue. This was one that we requested someone to come appear to us. This is one that has been rolled over for a number of 6-month times. So I see we have a gentleman here that wants to speak with us.
Mr. Doherty, members of the commission, I'm Wayne Collier, representing Tammany Holding Corporation, and I think the report of the staff is self-explanatory. We have enough capacity right now. We have 171 residences. We have sufficient capacity to meet the standards to go as high as 499 connections. And though I wish I could tell you that we were going to sell 320 lots and build 320 houses in the next 6 months, highly unlikely. I think we'll be back here every 6 months for some period of time. But we are aware of the capacity requirements, and hopefully when they are approaching, we'll be more than willing to make that investment.
Okay, does any of the commissioners have any questions for Mr. Collier? Thank you, Wayne.
Dave, if you wouldn't mind, I'd like a personal privilege. Maybe there was some intent in me coming. I haven't been here for a couple of years, but I didn't know Neil's last meeting was tonight. But I'd like to express on behalf of my position as a former member and as a member of the bar. Before I met Neil Hall, I read a brief he wrote in an appellate court, and those things are pretty boring. And I said, man, this guy writes like a novelist. Well, I found out not only is he a novelist, he is an extraordinary attorney, and he is one of the most hardworking, dedicated public servants I've ever met in my life. It's going to be a great loss, Neil. Terry, you got big shoes to fill, but I know Terry's already halfway there. So, Neil, best wishes to you, and congratulations on finally being able to say, I'm going to go do something else to enjoy my life.
And I got to tell you, if you don't mind, have a great compliment, Wayne, and you know I respect you tremendously. And we have such a great group of attorneys in this parish. The professionalism is just incredible. And of course, Wayne, you're in that number. And I appreciate you complimenting me on the brief. No judge has ever complimented me on a true brief. But thanks.
You're
I
welcome,
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Neil, that's because you're never brief.
Wah, wah, wah.
All right, any new business?
Yes, sir. We have confirmed July 14th, training for new commissioners, 8 a.m. in here. We'll be sharing the time if they wish to join us with new commissioners of other jurisdictions.
8 a.m.
8 a.m., July 14th, Saturday, for new commissioners. Old commissioners are invited, not required. And in July, we will start the sessions following your planning commission meeting to meet the other training obligation at the parish level. That training is for the state requirement, specific criteria, specific curriculum. This will be more general concepts, issues, questions that you have that we'll start doing after the planning meeting for a total of 4 hours. Also, I expect this week to get the information on how to sign on the computers for the ethics training. If you are already certified for this year, you need to get us the documentation that will cover. But the only option we will have is on the computer ethics training is with, I think it's 60,000 public employees in the state and one trainer. He is starting to get overloaded. So they are encouraging now there will be I think there may be one in Hammond next week where you can go for live training. There are other options, but there are none in the parish. We had one slide. Unfortunately, I didn't find out about it till after last week's meeting. We had one in Slidell 2 weeks ago. But anytime those come up, I'll let you know about them so you can actually hear from the state trainer. He is, for a topic like that, he does a very good job. But we will have to go by the computer training, and I'll get you that information. As soon as I get it, we'll shoot it to you in emails and discuss it next, maybe at your training session. We'll talk about it also and give some other people the information. Thank you.
So you're saying that the Hammond one that he's there, but the documentation you want us to do is on the computer training?
No, you can get a certificate from the Hammond training, and I can get that date for you and if you want to do it that way. Yeah, I'll email it to everybody. I think one of you don't have email. I thought it was you, Bernie, I wasn't gonna call you out. But, yeah, I'll send that to you, and I'll send the information on how to log on to the state sites. You can log on now and do it, but we'll get you the introductory information, tell you where to go and how to log on. And then you can do it, I think you can do it in 15-minute increments if you want,
It's okay, Bernie. At least you always answer your phone.
but we'll get it to you.
I said you always answer your phone. You do answer your phone.
Thank you, Mr. Bondo. Any other new business? Motion to adjourn? Thank you.